Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SC Fitness podcast. Now this is quite a special episode, I say, because it's the first episode that I'm actually recording on video to put onto YouTube as well. So I usually upload this just as a podcast where people can listen to the audio, but actually what I want to do more of this year in 2026 is actually just reach more people. I know the content that I give as a women's health and fitness coach is really good, is really realistic. It will work for so many women, especially in the world that we live in of so much conflicting, confusing information regarding our health. And I just think that maybe popping a video on YouTube once in a while, and especially maybe this weekly Q&A where I go over so many different questions from my clients and I answer things in a way which I know is applicable to so many other people as well, that this could be a good way to reach them. So if you are watching this video on YouTube, then welcome, hello. I hope that you enjoy. I know I really enjoy watching YouTube videos and consuming long form content. This is definitely a video that you can just pop on in the background and listen to, more so than necessarily watch, because this is just me recording my podcast. But I just really hope that it is something that you feel you benefit from and you gain information and knowledge from that you can apply to your life and see really good progress with your own health and fitness. So thank you for watching if you're new, and those guys who are listening who are either my clients, therefore I'm answering your questions today, or maybe you're just regular listeners of the podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. It always means so much, and I really hope you find this episode useful. Now, before we get stuck into the questions, I am also going to explain where I am for the purpose of the video, because I'm actually sitting on a bedroom floor right now, not in my own bedroom, unfortunately. I'm in such a beautiful bedroom because I'm actually at a beautiful house this week on a co-working retreat with some other self-employed friends. No one in the fitness industry actually, but other self-employed friends who are all working on their business this week. We did this last year and we loved it so much that we decided to rebook and come again this year. And I thought I would record my first YouTube video in a really lovely setting. I actually feel like an old school YouTuber just sat on their bedroom floor, like talking to you guys. So yeah, that's to explain the background and why I'm sat on the floor today. But yeah, essentially with this Q&A episode now, I'm just going to be answering questions from the check-ins that my online clients have written this week. They check in with me weekly, tell me about how their week has gone in terms of food, nutrition, self-care, how they're feeling about their week ahead, and I help them with, guidelines and advice of what I want them to do and approach different situations this week. So let's get stuck straight in, because I could so easily go off on a massive tangent with these intros. Sometimes I do. I always hope that my intros are beneficial and useful to people, but I think I could definitely start talking too much outside of what the topics of this podcast are today. So I do plan to record more YouTube videos where I'm sort of introducing myself a little bit more, telling you a bit more about my coaching. So keep an eye out for those. Or if maybe you're watching this YouTube video and I recorded it a little while ago, definitely go and look if those videos are there, because that's what I plan to upload shortly. But yeah, this is my Q&A episode. So I'm going to go straight into questions from my online clients. So first question we've got this week. I'm going to a party on Friday and I'm driving, so I won't be drinking, but how do I navigate being sensible with buffet party food? Should I eat a meal before I go and avoid the temptation of beige food and dessert? So this is a really good question, and I know it will apply to everyone at some point in the year. We're all going to be in a situation where you're essentially having beige party food at a night out. And first and foremost, I just want to reassure you guys, I'm never going to be the coach that tells you can't have some beige food now and again and you can't enjoy food at a party. You can still eat that food as part of a healthy, balanced lifestyle in a way that still aligns with your goals. Now, I know this client specifically has a fat loss goal right now, so yes, we do need to be consistent with your calorie intake to see progress, especially if you want to see progress within a certain time frame. You can't be, being really consistent Monday to Friday and then completely letting loose on a weekend. That is how people tend to feel like they are working really hard, but then they're undoing lots of progress when they're not kind of taking any consideration of their food on the weekend. Now, I know you're not going to do this, but I also want you to feel like you can go and enjoy some party food on Friday as well. So you kind of started off the conversation in the way that I want to as well, in that I wouldn't say necessarily eat your whole meal before you go, or eat a full meal before you go to the party. But what I would suggest is, first and foremost, don't go to the party starving, because that is a really easy way to then really overconsume calories in a buffet situation. Because let's be honest, buffet party food is really palatable, it's really tasty, it's designed to leave us wanting more. And if you go to that party feeling really hungry, it's going to be easy to fill yourself up on lots of calorie dense food. So I would say definitely don't go to the party hungry, But I would encourage you to have some party food when you're there, because by telling you that you can't, I think that promotes sort of that all or nothing mindset. I've definitely been in a situation where I've eaten before I've gone. I get to the party, I tell myself I'm not going to have any, and then I have a little bit, and then I feel like I failed, and then I feel like, oh, what's the point? I might as well just have more. That is when your calories from that party and then that day are going to be massively over what you're currently aiming for. And again, I want to be really clear here, this client has a fat loss goal, so we are being really conscious of her calories. However, this is a good thing to keep in mind, even if you're not focusing on fat loss right now and you just want a healthy, balanced approach to going to a party and having the food. So I would say don't go there starving, but maybe have a small afternoon snack that's going to tide you over, and you'll get to the party and you are ready to have some dinner, but you're not like ravenous. You could maybe, I know this person has 2 young children, have a small meal when your kids have dinner that night, and then you're leaving some calories in the bank for that evening buffet. Now, a way to approach a buffet without going too crazy on calories is have what I like to call the 1 plate rule. I mean, I don't even like to call it a rule, to be honest. Let's call it the 1 plate guideline. So at a buffet, mostly what people do to overconsume calories is we just keep going back. If you give yourself a compromise, basically, of I can have some party food, but I'm only going to have 1 plate of it, that's a really nice way of compromising. You can still have a little bit of the food on offer, which I know you will ultimately enjoy, because we all do at some point. But you've got a cap of how much you're going to have. So you could tell yourself, right, I'm going to have a little bit of what I fancy, but I'm just going to have 1 plate. I'm not going to go back up for seconds, thirds, etc. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect at doing that every time. Actually, the place that I'm at this week for this co-working retreat, we actually had a buffet dinner, the 8 of us last night, and I probably had like 1.5 plates. So I didn't rigidly stick to the 1 plate rule, but I didn't go crazy and I didn't go back for loads. And when I was finished, I just put my plate in the dishwasher and I knew I was done. So I would say give yourself a guideline of how much that you're happy to have. And also, I know you said it is a beige food and there's going to be lots of desserts, but at these buffets there are generally, you know, like some salady things, some vegetables, maybe something like a frittata. You could still pick some veggies and some protein to go on your plate, because that's going to help with keeping you full. So you can still make choices at that buffet which align with your goals. I would just say go for the 1 plate guideline. Still have some protein and some veggies, and once you finish that 1 plate, get rid of your plate, and then you're not going back up for more. That's a really good way of essentially being able to go and enjoy that party food, but not feeling like you are massively going over your calorie goals either. And I would say I use this method with clients all of the time, use the make room method, which is a method I created for my online coaching program, Thrive. It's in your client resources, in your coaching app. So go and have a look in that, or just ask me to link it and I will link it in the WhatsApp group. But the make room method basically gives you some, again, guidelines of how to approach generally the weekend, but obviously this applies to like any days in the week where maybe you're having like a meal out, or you're going to a party, or you're on holiday, where you can kind of make compromises the rest of the day to allow for a bigger calorie intake in the evenings, in this case. So what you could make sure you do on Friday is you stick to your goals in terms of a really healthy, high protein breakfast, a high protein and calorie controlled lunch. I would also minimize snacking on a day like this, because you're likely going to consume more calories at the party for dinner than you would have for dinner at home. So give yourself a little bit of a buffer. Definitely, like I said, don't go to that party starving. Fill yourself up at lunch, fill yourself up at breakfast, high protein and veggies and fruit, etc. That's going to be high volume as well, so you're going to fill yourself up. Keep that in mind in your meals, but be conscious of portion sizes, be conscious of extra added calories like cooking in oils and butters or adding cheese, etc. I would say keep your other meals a little bit on the leaner side and the lower calorie side that day, so that you've got a bit of a buffer for the evening. And then the best thing you can do as well is the next day, so if in this case it'll be Saturday morning, just go back to eating a normal, healthy, balanced breakfast, just as you would every other day of the week. Basically what tends to throw people off and maybe undo people's progress when it comes to a meal out like this, or a buffet or whatever, is that spiraling mindset. I talk about this all the time with you guys and on Instagram and everything. That spiraling mindset, that all or nothing mindset, tends to be what undoes people's progress. Even if you go to this buffet and you don't stick to the 1 plate guideline and you think you overeat, the best thing that you can do is just draw a line under it and get back to it the next day, and then learn from that experience for next time. So really hope that helps. Don't go starving, stick to one plate, still have some protein and veggies, and just be really on it the rest of the day with making sure your meals are sensible and on the leaner side in terms of calories, and things are going to balance out really well. I mean, the fact that you're not drinking alcohol is already a really easy way of saving calories. So yeah, just keep calorie-free drinks, have a little bit of the party food, and just keep in mind everything in moderation. But you've got this, let us know how you get on, but I really hope that was helpful. So this person said, I've been overwhelmed this week getting back to the normal routine. Then I had no childcare Wednesday and we had a snow day on Friday, so things definitely didn't go to plan this week. Do you have any tips of how to deal with things when your planned day goes out of the window? So one of the main concepts of my coaching, and what I always want to promote to you guys who come and work with me and anyone watching this video or listening to this podcast, is there has to be flexibility built into your program, because otherwise once you aren't able to do something because something gets in the way, potentially that's out of your control, like in this case, it can throw the whole week off. And then nobody is going to be in a good place to basically continue momentum towards their goals and getting back into the routine and feeling like they're confident doing that again. If you know the slightest thing could derail you, then that just shows your plan is too rigid. So I really want you guys to have that flexible mindset. Similar to what I just said about the food plan, and say for example at this buffet this person didn't follow the guidelines that I set and maybe they did overeat, the best thing that you can do is draw a line and then continue on with the things that you know work in your favor the next day. I would say this exact thing to this person as well. So say you have a day, say for Friday or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were just like completely off plan, you did not do the things that you'd wanted to do, maybe your food was a little bit different, you weren't able to get your training in. Obviously there were lots of things there which were out of your control. The best thing that you can do is in your mind, and then physically do these things as well, is draw a line under those 3 days and think, right, on Saturday when I have a little bit more childcare, I've got a bit more time for me again, then I'm just gonna get my training in or get back to planning food for the week. Try and think about, like, those 3 days are so minimum in compared to like the bigger picture. We're focusing on regular exercise and eating in a way which feels sustainable in your whole life. So a few days where you're not following your specific plans is really a drop in the ocean if you get back to it quite quickly afterwards. So that would definitely be my first piece of advice. The other thing is not only having a flexible mindset and putting that into place, it's also just having like flexibility within your session. So say for example you train at the gym, but maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were your days where you could have trained at the gym, and now Saturday and Sunday you can only train at home. Rather than writing off your session, just do it at home, adapt your session of course, and that's what I'm on hand for as your coach, to give you suggestions to adapt your workout for home if your workout is specific to the gym. Loads of people that work with me, you have home specific workouts, so I've got lots of adaptations and lots of different workouts to give you guys. So if you know that actually that week the gym is out of the question, then let's adapt your program to be at home. That is no problem at all. You just need to reach out to me in the WhatsApp group. I can send you a home workout or give you adaptations for how to adapt your own program. So maybe having that flexible mindset and carrying over into, you know, training at home as well as the gym can be really, really helpful. The other thing, and I talk about this a lot in my content, and I've talked about this a lot in Thrive, is focusing on what you can do really is a game changer. So in this case, maybe you've been focusing on what you weren't able to do on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, whereas actually what is in control, I always like the phrase control the controllables. What was in your power to control on those days? Perhaps the kids were home, like you said, you had no childcare, you weren't able to get a workout in potentially, but could you still make sure that you have a high protein breakfast, lunch and dinner? Can you make sure that you still don't mindlessly snack throughout the day? Could you have got outside with the kids on those days, maybe gone for a walk, maybe played in the snow, done something active which is still really good for your health? That's how I would really encourage you to reframe this situation. So yeah, not everything's going to plan, but at the same time you're still living your life and you're still making good choices with food, you're still staying active. And there's a lot to be said for keeping stress levels low and how that really helps our progress. And if you're really stressed about not being able to stick to your plan perfectly, that is gonna basically have an impact on other areas of your life, whether it's food choices, whether it's how well you're sleeping. So keep in mind that there are always things you can control. It's just about managing your expectations sometimes on days where things are getting in your way. That's how I always want you guys to be able to reframe things, be flexible with your approach. Maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday were the days that you'd hope to fit in a couple of workouts, but you know what? That was out of your control that those things happened. Get one done on the weekend and then get back to it again on Monday. So always think about what you could do next to get back into your usual routine, and don't panic if for a few days you're off plan or your plan hasn't quite gone to plan. Basically, the reason that rigid diet and exercise programs don't work in the long term is that because as soon as something gets in the way, which ultimately it always will, then it throws people off track and then they think, oh, what's the point? Whereas that's not how we approach things in my coaching. That's not how we approach things in my Thrive program. We've got flexibility, we've got adaptability, and we're getting in that mindset of being completely out of all or nothing and actually just focusing on what we can do and what we can control. So really focus on those things in your power. And again, that's what I'm here for. That's what the WhatsApp group is here for. Reach out to us throughout the week. I'll always get back to you within Monday to Friday. I'll often check the group on a Sunday. So if you've got, things that you need help with to start the new week, I'll always be there. So make sure that you do reach out to us when you need, because I know that'll be really helpful. But yeah, don't worry if a few days go off plan. Look at the bigger picture. Are you doing things consistently the rest of the time, and are you focusing on what you can do, because that's what's going to really have the biggest impact on your goals. Next question, and I really love this question because again, it's something that I know lots of us will relate to, and especially coming into the new year. Like, as I record this, it's Tuesday the 13th of January. We're still early on in January. People are still getting back into routine post the Christmas break. The person that asked this question, I know she had a holiday in early January, so she's just getting back into things this week. And I know we will all feel this way post any sort of break, whether it's now, after Christmas, or after a holiday later in the year. So this question says, how long does it take to lose gains when it comes to strength? For example, if you don't lift for 2 or 3 weeks, do you start to lose muscle? So I actually have really good news for you here, in that no, you're not going to lose drastic strength or muscle after 3 to 4 weeks off. I would consider that a short break in the grand scheme of things. And again, like I've already said on this podcast today, you have to look at the bigger picture. Is this a one-off 3 to 4 week break of training for you? Yes, it absolutely is. If somebody was having 3 to 4 weeks off every couple of months, I'd say, right, we do need to manage your expectations of how quickly and how much progress you're going to see. However, this was a 3 to 4 week break due to Christmas and your holiday, and I know around that you've been really, really consistent with your training. You don't lose your strength or muscle after a short break. Your body won't start shrinking, it won't start weakening in any dramatic way. And I just want to make clear that I know this person actually had a really active Christmas break. She trained over Christmas in terms of park run and staying active. She also went on an active holiday. So you might not have been strength training in the gym, but you were still moving your body. You were still exercising regularly. So in that sense, it's not like you were like on the sofa for a month. That's when you might notice that you feel a little bit different, or feel a lot different even, and then your body takes longer to get back to your strength training, whereas actually you were active in a different way. I also know that you've come back raring to go to get back into training again, and it's kind of like how I explained the food approach earlier. The best thing that you can do after anything off plan or any sort of break in nutrition goals or exercise goals is just get back to it. And I know that all of you guys who are working with me, you have a plan ready to go. There's no wondering what you should do or when you should do it or how you should do it. I write your program so that you don't have to think about it. So just getting back into your training this week, you'll really notice that you feel like you've never been away before long at all. You may notice a very small drop in performance when you first get back in the gym or lifting weights again. And to be honest, that's usually your nervous system. So that's the part that helps you recruit muscles efficiently. It's taken a little break essentially, and it just needs to get back into the swing of things. It's kind of like when you had a work break and you go back to work. You need to retrain your brain, don't you, to get back to, thinking in a certain way, being focused in a certain way, getting back into your daily tasks. It's exactly the same with exercise. It's just about kind of reminding your body what you're doing. So if you do feel like the first week back or the first session back, it might just be the first session, feels a bit clunky, don't worry, that is normal. I always say to people after a break, the first session back is the hardest. It's not going to be the hardest bit is actually getting there. Once you get into the flow of things and your body's starting to be like, oh yeah, I remember what we used to do. I promise you, you'll feel back to it in no time. I also just like to reassure people as well that muscle memory really is a thing. So when you start exercising, and in this case start strength training, you are basically creating new cells, and those cells remain even when you've had a break. It's just about getting back to and using those cells again. It's using those muscles in the way you were using them before. And that's why when you've learned a specific sport, whether it's like skiing, strength training, swimming, even if you haven't done it for ages, your body doesn't completely forget. And it's kind of like that, like you haven't actually even had a really long break, but you could have a break from squatting for years. I wouldn't recommend it, but maybe someone would. But I guarantee you don't forget how to squat. It's kind of like how you don't really forget how to swim or ride a bike. We do rely on muscle memory, so keep that in mind. You're not going to completely go back to the beginning. And as you know, with your programs from me, I do always talk about working at an effort level for how you feel that day. So yes, we do take into consideration weights that you've used in previous weeks, and that gives you something to aim for. However, I do always say work at, for example, an 8 RPE for how you feel today, because at the end of the day, you're going to get a benefit out of your training if you're pushing yourself, but you can only push yourself to a level that you're able to the time that you're training. It is really good to have kind of reference points of like, okay, I lifted this last time, so I know I'm capable of that. But at the same time, if you've had a break, or maybe you're at a point in your cycle where your energy is really low, you have to take those things into consideration as well. So with your first training week, back to it after a few weeks off, just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that you don't have to be lifting the heaviest weights and working as hard as possible. Because it's your first week back, you are going to have to kind of ease your body into it. It's like easing your body and your mind into it. So yeah, you definitely won't have lost any drastic strength or muscle. If anything, things might feel a little bit slow or clunky, but once you've got that first session and that first week ticked off, I guarantee you'll be back in the swing of things. So yeah, like I said earlier, don't go into that spiraling mindset of, oh, I've undone my progress now, what's the point? The best thing that you can do is just get back into training. And obviously that's what I'm here as your coach to help you with. You've got your program ready to go. You've got me here as support and accountability to tick off those sessions, to tell me that you're doing them, to reach out for help if you need any. And at the end of the day, 2 to 3 or even 4 weeks off is not going to undo months and even years of hard work. And actually taking a break can often mean that you come back feeling refreshed and motivated and raring to go, which I know this person does. So yeah, don't panic about that break. Just get back into training this week, listen to your body, and then push yourself over time, and you will feel like you never were away and your gains just keep on coming. Okay, next question. Got 2 more to go. So my partner needs to eat a lot more calories than I do, and sometimes I find it challenging to cook us joint meals. Have you got any tips to make this easier to manage? I usually add more rice or pasta to his meals, but maybe it's also more for him to eat snacks, etc. throughout the day so that we can eat the same meals. So this is such a good question, because I know there's lots of women in the group that live with men who have, annoyingly, bigger calorie needs than we do. And essentially, generally, the bigger the person, the more calories they will need. But also there is obviously discrepancies between males and females and how we use our calories and how our bodies function. So it is up to us all individually, and obviously that's what I'm here to help you with as your coach, to understand our body's needs. And you might find out, and I definitely did, that the first couple of years that I lived with my now husband, but when we were first going out and living together, it took me a little while to realize, like, whoa, I cannot eat the same portions of him if I don't want to gain weight. And obviously everyone's goals are different, but at that point I was just in a phase where I was actually in a fat loss phase, and then even then after that in a maintenance phase, and I just knew my calories were lower than his. I would have to adjust the meals that we had to suit both our calorie goals. Now this person has actually already given herself some really good advice. So think, if you want to eat the same meals, if lots of you, I know, and I've done this before, you might have meal boxes like Gusto, HelloFresh, Mindful Chef, in which case the meals are portioned out. And if you know that those meals suit both of you, as in like they suit your calorie goals, but maybe your husband needs a little bit more, a really good way to do that is to do exactly what you said. And this obviously doesn't have to be related to a meal preparation box. This could be your own meals that you've made yourself, is to add a bigger portion of something. So in this case, you've suggested rice or pasta. That's perfect. You say you have like a spaghetti bolognese, give him more pasta or give him more rice with a curry. That's going to be a really good way to up his calories without affecting the overall meal that you've made. If you did have a recipe box, maybe he could cook himself an extra portion of pasta, or maybe have a bread roll or something like that on the side. What I would never want you to compromise in is your amount of protein and amount of veggies. And I would say with an evening meal that you split for 2 of you, those contents could be the same, but where he could have extra calories is a bigger portion of carbohydrates. So I think you're already doing really well in suggesting that. And also the second thing that you've suggested here about, is it more for him to, take responsibility and eat more throughout the day so that you can have the same meals? Yes, absolutely it is. And that's what I've sort of realised my husband does now. We tend to cook a portion of our dinner and split it, because it's just a lot easier with kind of maybe proteins and veggies, and, depending on what you're making, I think it's quite a lot easier to make one big portion and then divide it by 2 than it is to think, like, you're having 3/4 the portion, I'm having a quarter. Maybe that gets complicated with weighing out ingredients, etc. It is going to be much easier to cook one meal that you divide by 2, but you're going to have to add more stuff to his to bulk the calories, which at the end of the day is also his responsibility. But if you didn't want to do that, you could definitely just say, well, you need to eat more throughout the day. And I know that that is something that my husband does now. We tend to eat a very similar evening meal, but he will have like a bigger dessert than me. He'll have like another meal, which ups his calories throughout the day. So yeah, I would say definitely talk to your partner about this and say, look, this is what our evening meal is going to be. It's going to fit in more with my goals because I'm on lower calories for my calorie needs. But you need to make sure that you're adding a little bit more, or maybe he could let you know, can you cook me a bit more pasta to go with it? So it is a trial and error process, absolutely. But yeah, this is exactly what you need to do, is maybe add more to his meals rather than take away from yours, and get him to eat a little bit more throughout the day. But again, that is on him and his goals as well. But yeah, really good question. I know lots of people will relate to that. And then final question, and I really like this one because it's completely different to the others. Do you have any good soup recommendations that I can make in my soup maker? Because I just got a new one. So I would say when it comes to soups, especially if you don't want to add loads of extra calories, and I'm just saying this off the top of my head because I made a really good parsnip soup over Christmas, but having like a root vegetable within that soup, I think that really makes a difference in terms of how filling it is. You don't obviously have to do that, but I find root vegetable soups really nice. So like parsnips, carrots, potatoes, sweet potatoes, what else was there? But like those sort of vegetables. And adding like hot stock to them. Like I made a parsnip soup and I just added hot stock. I didn't add any creamy sort of ingredients, and it was such a creamy soup. And I think that was because it was like a root vegetable and it had that thicker texture. I mean, you could chuck in loads of other vegetables as well. Mine was literally parsnips and hot stock blended up with some spices as well. I think I put cumin in there. I think I put paprika in there. And to be honest, I just got that off, I googled like parsnip soup recipe. I think it was like BBC Good Food. So I literally just got it off the internet. And do you know what else is really good? And I'm not promoting the use of this for everything, but if you use AI, so like ChatGPT, for example, if you maybe put into ChatGPT either this question, do you have any good soup, like simple soup recommendations for a soup maker? Or you could even say, I've got these ingredients in my fridge, give me a soup recipe, because AI is really, really useful for that. And to be honest, that's exactly what I would do if I were you. So use that to your advantage. Like, I'm not saying we should use AI for everything, and I don't think people should get all of their questions answered from AI, but something like ChatGPT for this purpose can be really handy. And then if you find any good soup recipes that you try and love, pop them in the WhatsApp group, because in our client WhatsApp group, we can share different ideas, and I tend to add them to our client Trello board, which is that recipe board where I've, over the years that we've had the WhatsApp group, I have put in like people's breakfast ideas, lunch ideas, recipes that they've tried. So yeah, I would definitely use that to your advantage and keep us updated in what you make. But I would say if you want to cook veggie soups, or not even just veggie soups, you could add some proteins in there. That would be great as well. You can do like chicken soup, etc. But just keep an eye on the ingredients, because that's how you know you're going to be like whether you're eating like a high calorie soup or a lower calorie soup. And I personally, for a soup that I make at home, I wouldn't be making it, especially if it's something that I just want to eat day to day, I wouldn't be adding like anything like cream. I would just be focusing on like the veggies and the stock. And maybe if you like a soup but maybe you don't want to blend like a protein like chicken in, you could make a veggie soup and then have a portion of chicken with it. That would be really nice as well. So yeah, I hope that helps, but definitely keep us updated as to what you make. Right, I think that is all the questions for this week. If I've missed off anything, please do let me know in the WhatsApp group. I will add it to my list for next week's podcast, or I'll just send you help and guidance with that issue in the WhatsApp group itself. Thank you so much for listening and maybe even watching my first recorded podcast. I hope that you guys have enjoyed. I hope that it's flowed okay, because I have at one point forgot to record, had to stop, had to re-record, so fingers crossed it's not too disjointed. But thank you so much for listening and watching, and yeah, I hope this was a good episode. I'll be back soon with more Q&A episodes. This is obviously something I do every single week, answering client questions. But I'm going to plan to do more long-term form YouTube videos with helpful content. And again, what I help with is realistic, relatable advice for busy women who are spinning lots of plates but still care about their health and fitness goals and being the best version of themselves, essentially. So if you've got any sort of questions or would like any advice from someone whose approach is like mine, then comment below. I will always add it to my list of content to create. Thank you again for watching and listening, and I will speak to you guys soon. Bye.